Bill O'Reilly is going to do an anti-drug rant here, straight out of reefer madness. So let's listen and then we'll break it down.
Many drug criminals work the minority neighborhoods in big cities. Prisons became filled with people of color, prompting the left to label the anti-crime initiatives as racist. Under President Bush the Younger, those accusations got nowhere. Under President Obama, they have been taken very seriously. Mr. Obama and his first Attorney General, Eric Holder, believe there is a strong racial element in the American criminal justice system. They ignore the fact, however, that drug dealers have devastated poor neighborhoods and enslaved millions of minority Americans over the years. Mr. Obama and Mr. Holder also believe that selling drugs like crack, heroin, and meth, not a violent crime. Never mind that folks addicted to those drugs commit the majority of property crimes in America, as well as the majority of child abuse. Never mind that drug overdoses kill thousands of Americans every year. Never mind that drug gangs in places like Chicago and Miami are responsible for an incredible amount of violence, as you need guns to compete in the street drug trade. So now, just in time for Halloween, the Justice Department is set to release 6,000 inmates from penitentiaries all across the USA, many of them dope dealers. Also, Congress is getting ready to change some mandatory sentencing, making it easier for pushers and other so-called nonviolent criminals to avoid paying the penalty they deserve. All of this liberal compassion for criminals is having an effect. Violent crime is rising quickly in many places.
Okay, I love that last line. Liberals' compassion for criminals. No, the whole point is, Bill, we don't think that they're criminals. That's the whole point. That's why we want them out of there. We don't think they belong in there. And then he says, crime is rising. Well, wait. We know for sure from the Colorado example, they legalized marijuana at the state level. Crime went down. So what do you mean? First of all, what crime are you referring to? And then, by the way, what does he actually say? He goes on to cite places where it's still illegal. He goes on to cite places where drugs are still illegal. And then he goes, see, it's the liberals and them wanting to legalize drugs that's led to an increase in crime here. What? That makes no sense. Where they have legalized drugs, the crime went down. And then we also have the Portugal example where they decriminalized drugs and crime went down. You know what else went down? Drug use. I know, in Bill O'Reilly's mind, he can't take that. He's like, wait, what? You're allowing people to do it, and then less people did it. Me no get it. Me conservative mind no work like that. Doesn't understand counterintuitive things. God, you're so sad. You can tell he's working backwards from his conclusion. His conclusion is drugs bad. Minorities bad. Did I say that out loud? Drugs bad. So gotta lock the people up. He said, one of the things he said, drug dealers have devastated poor neighborhoods. Well, wait. Why don't we actually listen to the experts like Dr. Carl Hart, for example, who says it's the opposite? That basically poverty has devastated poor neighborhoods by definition. The problem isn't the drugs, the problem is the poverty. And again, we have evidence to back this up. When we did the war on poverty, that boosted many people in minority communities and otherwise out of poverty. I mean, take Social Security, for example. When that program started, it was over 30% of seniors that were living in poverty. And then it dropped to 14%. So that's a success. But he would just dismiss that. He doesn't think, in his mind, he thinks the drugs are the problem and the lifestyle, the values are the problem, and that leads to poverty. But what he's missing is systemic economic factors that any idiot with a basic understanding can pick up on. So, in other words, the idea that, for example, when you don't have any jobs available, you will be in poverty. Or when the only jobs that are available, you still live in poverty. The problem is not anything else, the values, the drugs. The problem is the economic system. The problem is the system doesn't provide any opportunity. The system doesn't provide a living in any way, shape, or form. So no matter how few drugs are in the community or what the values are, when there are no opportunities, by definition, you can't get out of poverty. But he disregards systemic factors because he wants to blame poor people. He wants to blame black people. He wants you to say, it's your fault. So it's the drugs, it's the values, it's all these things that allow me to take responsibility away from the system, the larger economic system, and just point the finger at you and wash my hands of it and say, I had nothing to do with this. It's got nothing to do with the rest of us. And then also, He says Obama thinks it's not a crime to sell violent drugs. I'm sorry. Obama thinks it's not a violent crime to sell drugs. Yeah, because it's not. He's amazing. Like, okay, so if you go to CVS, do they sell alcohol there? I think they do. And you buy some hard alcohol or whatever, beer, anything, and you go and you check out. Is the cashier or the owner of the CVS a violent criminal because you just bought a substance? That's a substance which, by the way, is more dangerous than marijuana, for example. Are they a violent criminal? No, of course not. Now, again, he would argue, well, that's already legal, so duh, they're not criminals. But the principle is the point here. Because the idea he's getting at is, well, selling hard drugs. Selling a hard substance that'll change your consciousness. That's a violent crime. Well, alcohol is that. Alcohol, again, is worse than a lot of the drugs that are illegal. But not in a million years would he say the CEO of Anheuser-Busch should be dragged away in handcuffs. He wouldn't say it. Why? Because he's a lazy thinker, guys. He's not an intellectual. So he doesn't understand how to apply objective standards and look at things in a serious way. He's just a victim of his own cultural biases. So he was raised in a place and time when alcohol was perfectly socially acceptable. Therefore, alcohol is right. All other drugs that are illegal are wrong. Why? Because the law says so, and I'm not going to look into the roots of the law. I'm not going to check to see if the law is objective. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to be empirical about it. I'm not going to use logic. I'm just going to say it is what it is. Alcohol, fine. All the others, bad. And that's the end of the conversation. But that's dumb, Bill. That makes you a silly person if you want to engage in the national dialogue on these things, but you have no arguments to back up what you're saying, or at least no solid arguments to back up what you're saying. And finally, he says, well, the drug gangs, they're out of control. Wait. So you're in a rant about how we should keep drugs illegal. You're saying the drug gangs are out of control. Have you considered that maybe the drug gangs are out of control because the substances are illegal? He hasn't, but we know that that's the case. It's not like we don't have examples in history of this, Billy boy. How many times have we brought up prohibition? When alcohol was illegal, the mafia became incredibly powerful, much bigger, and very rich. Because you banned legitimate businesses from selling alcohol, so it went underground to the black market, so criminals are going to be dealing with the product and are going to be selling the product, and they're going to get very rich as a result of it. If you didn't make it illegal, the mafia wouldn't have had a monopoly on the market, and they wouldn't have made more money and been more powerful. Today, it's the same with the drug cartels and drug gangs. The drug gangs can't have power, can't have money, if people can just go to their local CVS or go to their local liquor store or go to their local weed store and get whatever drug they want. All of their power would be taken away from them. The drug cartels would not be able to compete if Big Pharma or fucking Corona or whatever other company decides to get in on selling the drugs. So the problem is because it's illegal. If you legalize, tax, and regulate the drugs, well, then you make it so the black market disappears and crime drops. Again, we have historical examples. We have the facts on this, but he's not interested in the facts. He's working backwards from his conclusion.